Anyone else? I'll close public comment on old business.
Just to interject, everybody at the condos owns their condos. They're not like individual rental or anything. They're homes also.
I understand that. Thank you.
I'm just saying.
Public comments closed. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so anybody have any comments about, no, we've got that. Any additional changes, comments? Anything?
Excuse me if I may. Did you guys get the correspondence from the citizens that were sent to all of us, board members
Correspondence
as well?
comes
Did
at
you
the-
get all of the stuff from the One Beach resident as well?
That comes in at number 10 at the bottom.
I just wanted to make sure you had received it. That's been a problem in the past.
Thank you, Trustee DeShano.
You betcha.
And yes, I'm on the email list, so I see all the stuff from the beach residents. Thank you.
I'll make a motion to accept the ordinance
Second.
as written.
A motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Canfield.
No.
Brooke.
Yes.
Simmons.
No.
Rokas.
Yes.
Fletcher.
Yes. Okay. Pass 3-1. Go ahead and forward this on to the trustee board.
3-2, Rick.
Excuse me, 3-2, sorry.
I will make sure the board of trustees gets that.
And a new business. We've had some talk about having specific, another one that's come up in farm dominions. Anyone care to lead off the?
Where did the letter from Spicer, who prompted that?
I had sent stuff asking her to come, if she could come to the meeting, and forwarded her our emails that we had, you know, because I had asked for verbiage from our board on stuff that, you know, why do we need one, or I guess what's the thoughts of having a special usage for barn dominium, is what prompted it.
Okay.
Because I've had stuff from Mr. Roof and Trustee Campbell about that various times, so then I sent that on to Jennifer at Spicer's for a, you know, have her look at it. She could not attend tonight, so she sent us a memorandum and just kind of took our questions and basic stuff and gave us some discussion points, basically.
I'm doing a little bit of research in reference to this. Speaking to our building inspector, he said one thing we need to consider is the square foot of the garage if we were to go ahead, because currently our township limits the square footage of a garage to 862 square feet.
Which is basically 24 by 32.
Which,
So a 3-car garage basically is what it allows.
yeah, but for the person that's going to build a barn dominium, if you have, let's say you're a route driver, you've got your truck, you've got the trailer you pull behind your truck, or let's say the person that goes to Florida and they built one down in the village to where they can pull their motor home into it, and the minimum square footage if you could put a motor home in it is 800 square foot, is considered about average, which leaves 62 square foot to try to get out of your vehicle and not hit your doors on walls and things of that nature. That was the one concern our building inspector brought up. Some people question steel siding, but we have homes all over the place that are actually having that exact steel siding on the exterior walls. It's lower in maintenance, it actually has a better warranty than vinyl siding. Speaking to another building department today, he said one thing you definitely want to suggest, because you can't go stricter than state building code, but you can suggest to make sure that the persons don't just do a standard slab on slab, but you should have in there the benefits of having a rat wall, which eliminates issues with water and rodents. And when it comes to compartmentalizing between the two parts of the barn dominium, you need to, it was recommended, no plastic between the two, even though they put the firewall up, say they want to wash their motor home inside of their garage, which actually my dad did do, and he had steel walls inside, because that way he could just clean the walls down and it's no big deal. You put plastic, you end up with a fire, you have toxic and problems. So,
Yeah, because you're right, because the building code covers a lot of that to begin with, as far as fire break between the living space and any portion of
well, people are putting fire breaks, but then they're wanting to put plastic over the drywall that is the fire break. And they're doing that because they think that that could be a better way to maintain, where if you think of the actual maintenance issue, the steel is lower in the maintenance. Just, hey, I'm bringing a few of the issues,
And when you build on a slab, anything bigger than a 10 by 12 has to have either a footing and or a block wall and or a rat wall, which is also the same size as the footing.
I know I was,
So, I mean, so what I'm saying is a lot of stuff is already covered under the building section of the thing, as far as having a separate classification for a barn dominium. Actually, the big barn dominium craze, a lot of the stuff's in Texas, and most of those are steel structures.
yes,
Steel walls, steel structures,
Yes.
and steel structures are covered in our book, and also under the building codes, which are in commercial sites only.
well, see, in a perfect world, what you suggested is right. I know of a specific case in Calhoun Township where the family put up an accessory building and then was told by our building inspector, after they already bought the permit and built the building, to tear it down because it wasn't permitted. And then, after sitting down and doing a little bit of fancy finagling, it became a barn dominium. So they didn't have to tear their building down after spending thousands of dollars to build the thing. And they said to me, they said, we never thought we'd be living in a pole barn, but due to the glitch, when the inspector shows up and says, well, you don't have a house out here, well, you could always convert it to housing. Problem is, they don't have a rat wall, because it was never suggested in the very beginning. And they were having the final inspection, and when they were having the final inspection, they found that it was a little problematic.
Which goes to the building department, not the planning department. I mean, I guess that's where I
If we dot our i's and cross our t's, we can try to reduce that from happening.
But that's a building
That's
inspector
the building
problem,
part.
Charlie.
That's what I'm
That's not
trying
a
to get
planning
at.
commission
Most of
problem.
this stuff all has to do with building of the structure. The building of the structure is handled by the building department and actually hired by the International Building Code is what Michigan has adopted. And you're correct when you said earlier, it's actually kind of the other way around. We have to follow the International Building Code.
Exactly.
But you can have more restrictive codicils on top of that.
Correct.
As long as you meet their basic stuff, we can have more restrictive stuff as far as in our building codes. But I said, a lot of this stuff, I mean, other than specifics like, you know, home occupations, you know, the size of the building. What else are you gonna do with it? But if I got property and I wanna build a building, I'll build it to whatever the current codes and stuff are, you know.
I'm just bringing up
As far as the
items
firewall,
of concern.
as far as the firewall, fire marshal can attest to what the firewall has to be.
Well, and if you notice, trustee Campbell reached out to me for some questions on that. And essentially, our jurisdiction on that, it's gonna be a single-family home. Our jurisdiction is very limited on single-family homes for the simple reason is the building code, the electrical, Michigan's residential building code, the IBC, those codes are in place to build that house. 102.5, 102.8. I know I quoted the site, the code in the letter. I'm drawing a blank on whether it's 102.5 or 102.8, but to it says basically that we have jurisdiction, limited jurisdiction, but not exclusive in areas of water supply, fire department access, addressing, and then anything that falls into a 105 permit category, i.e. solar panels, stored battery. Essentially, they're building a single-family house with a big garage. That's building, and you guys, that's not in our scope. And obviously, I believe it would be a residential garage to house would be if I get this wrong, my building inspector buddy of mine is gonna kill me, but I believe it's a 2 hour?
5/8 drywall.
Pardon? 1 hour, 1 hour.
5/8 drywall.
5/8, yeah. So that's,
Same way with the door between the two.
correct, so.
And a lot of the townships and cities require instead of having a flat, you actually have to have a curb between your living area and the garage
right.
portion of it in case any spills come, it's not gonna come in. I built one 20 years ago up in, by Tawas. Same thing, and I kinda half educated the guys up there when I did it. It was a 40 by 60 pole barn, and we finished off 26 feet for the cabin and had a utility room. That was all set up, and 2 layers of 5/8 rock all the way up to the ceiling, a 2-hour steel door. We met up mowed all the codes and everything
Yep.
else for it. So
And
then I had OSB on the ceiling, but it didn't matter because the fire break went right up to the roof.
Again,
So,
with
yeah,
that
I'm familiar with those.
And again, with that single-family home,
Mhm.
we have very limited jurisdiction. Predominantly, it is your trades codes that have
They're building
primary
inspectors to make sure
Yeah,
that all that
exactly.
stuff is, and it's right in the code book. So.
correct.
Yeah.
Yep, so we're kind of, as long as we can get a fire truck to you and we know where you are, and you don't, and, we're concerned about solar panels and stored battery obviously, for the hazards and the risks.
Yeah.
So, a barn dominium with an attached garage and a home occupation in it is no different than a one-family home with a garage and a home occupation in it.
Now, if you have, depending on the occupation,
Well, the occupation-
can get into the fire service. But if somebody just, has all kinds of toys and wants to build a barn dominium as a single-family home for themselves, that's not commercial, that's strictly R1. If they want to have a business out of it, that would depend on the business, would And then it might fall into our jurisdiction more so if it becomes commercial or mixed usage. But essentially, a barn dominium, by every definition I've seen, is basically somebody's building a house with a big garage. I have not researched it as extensively, obviously, as Mr. Campbell has. But from my research on it, looking at some different floor plans online, I spent last Sunday, my day off, working on that correspondence for Charlie, or for Trustee Campbell, my
Appreciate
apologies. And so, understandably, as long as it stays in the R1 classification, it's not our jurisdiction, it's the building and trades jurisdiction predominantly. Now, obviously, if they're doing a business out of there, then it can fall into the fire code. But-
Home occupation is already defined, and we already have that covered.
Right,
So whether it's a barn-dominium or if it's stick-built,
exactly.
if it has an attached garage and a home occupation, it is no different than what would be happening right now. Just different style of construction.
True.
Well, a lot of barn dominiums are built on oversized lots, or some of the governmental bodies require oversized lots because of what the average size of a barn dominium is. They're not average 12 and 1,500 square feet. They just built one over 3,000 square feet right off of State Park.
But
Very,
that,
very nice unit with a 1,000 square foot garage.
but that doesn't matter because we already have our setbacks. And they have to follow the setbacks, and then we also have the footprint of the building, and it has to follow the footprint of the building, no matter what they want to do. Whether
And
it's,
we limit the size of the
we
garage.
limit
that's
the
attached
size,
to
and
it.
it can only be so, it can only 2 stories or 25 foot tall. So, I don't see,
The question is the size, because
Doesn't-
most people.
doesn't matter. it still has to fall within the guidelines of what we have. Doesn't matter if it's stick-built, doesn't matter if it's post and beam built. It still has to fall within the guidelines we have. It can only take up so much of the property area, it has to have the setbacks.
I'm not stupid to that fact.
Well, then what are you trying to get by here?
The question is, you know, we're talking about different neighborhoods possibly. We're talking,
What's the difference whether the neighborhood, I mean, it has to fit in the neighborhood, we have it all laid out here. I mean, that's special use permit,
You mentioned you worked
special use
Sunday.
permit has to be issued anyhow if they want to do something different. From my understanding.
You mentioned you had communication to Charlie. Is there something more than that?
That would be the email. I finally typed the letter when I came to work on Tuesday from my notes. So that would be the only, oh, he sent me some emails.
Okay.
So,
But this was the communication.
That was my response to him, yes.
Okay, thank you.
so if it came to a commercial area and a commercial business and they wanted to attach a home dwelling to it,
That would fall into zoning.
that
Wouldn't
just
it?
falls right back into zoning.
Yeah, and we would obviously have jurisdiction in the commercial.
So then if they addressed it as barn dominium, they wanted to put a body shop in there and they wanted to live in it also, however they wanted to do it,
The body shop would fall into the International Fire Code as
all right,
that entity, but the home itself would, but they're still gonna have to comply with the building codes.
that's the one,
And it would just
True.
add the fire codes to the applicable areas, yes, sir.
which are already in place.
Correct.
Yeah, so you'd have to have a fire break between whatever work area they got in their residence
Well,
to
and-
make sure, you know.
And if they have a body shop, you're getting into paint booths
Oh, yeah,
and
yeah, I know.
there's a whole, I mean, yeah, you're
We get
initially.
to have your expertise on something like that versus just our building inspector.
Correct.
So number 5, it says,
Home occupation.
yeah, that's
That's not
exactly
easy.
what it said.
Yes, but it is.
Well,
Yeah,
I know
home
you guys
occup-
don't see
home
this, but
occupation
number
part
5
of it
kind
is
of
another
addresses
issue.
that from Spicer's comments.
Home occupation goes in our classes, though, not commercial.
Well, that's number 8, right?
Yeah,
Commercial
that's the right way
service.
of looking at it. That's-
Well,
number 4 says,
you know, when we talked about this initially, I guess my only concern was what's allowed for, you gave the example of a body shop on highway commercial, if they wanted to put up a building, and is our current ordinance,
Allows a residence in a C classification along with your thing. I mean, if you look back at, you know, 100 years ago, when everybody started a business, they lived above the top of their buildings, you know, and that's how they could do some of that. As long as, because I don't have a problem with it, as long as it meets all the fire code
Well,
restrictions,
and
you know.
that's, I guess that's where the comfort level comes in, right, is with the fire code.
Correct.
From the
Once you get
body
in-
shop, between the body shop and
Right.
the residential structure, so.
I mean, you're not gonna put it in a residential area.
Correct, yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it's a commercial setting. And a residence is allowed on a commercial setting with a business,
So, attached or unattached,
doesn't say.
doesn't say.
I mean, if that's something else you want to explore to make sure of that, but, you know, I guess the biggest, we already have it in our fire code when it comes in commercial buildings, that, you know, that's more stringent when it comes to that versus the residential portion.
Well, yes, and also that the commercial portion of that, there's building codes that would also come in. The codes overlap so much and complement each other that, you know, we're all freestanding codes, but yet we all have our lane where, you know, the building inspector does a lot more with the actual building. You know, obviously there are issues with structure that we look at too under the code, fire code, but not to the in-depth of, you know, I'm not out checking footings.
And that's all we changed.
Yeah.
I changed it a couple of years ago when somebody comes in for a site plan, that the building administrator has to sign it, I sign it, you guys sign it.
Yes, sir.
And if applicable, so does the building inspector. So that we have all these things on a site plan, so that everything's covered, and make sure that all those types of codes are wrapped up in that, depending on what type of a structure it is. Because before it was just, here's your thing, here's a site plan, nobody gets to look at it until it comes to us. Like, no, I want everybody to look at it, and I want all their input, so when we have all this stuff, we can have all the information to make a educated decision on it, you know. I don't know all the fire codes. You know, I don't want it, that's your job, you know.
If you get into this home occupation, it gets really sticky. No retail business.
Well, that's in residential though. Under the home occupation thing, that's all residential stuff.
Yes.
Commercial is a whole different ballgame.
Home occupations are allowed in all districts except C1, C2,
Right.
and 1,
Correct.
L1.
Because that's a regular business, and then they want to have a resident along with their business, so it doesn't really, yeah, commercial is totally different from that, so.
Number 7 right here. Single-family dwelling
Correct.
cannot be used for commercial services.
Correct, yeah.
So I guess we seem to be covered without changing anything. Is that your thoughts?
That was my thought to begin with, you know, that, I know that it's, you know, like, we want to be proactive. If other things are coming up, we want to make sure we have verbiage and stuff to cover it. You know, there's still some things back in the planning book that some of the ordinances, not the ordinances, but definitions need to be updated. I mean, you know, there's new terms that aren't in our book that need to be updated also, so it falls in the correct place. But as far as this goes,
Gary,
No,
comfortable?
I looked through it, and I'm the one that had questions, and I found everything I had a question about addressed,
okay.
so I don't see any.
Charles, what other things can we help you?
Well, my
Talk
biggest
about with the
question was the
condominiums.
square footage in reference to the garage part.
What about
So, you know, our building inspector says that the maximum garage size can be 862 square feet.
Right. Yeah,
But,
and if you want something larger than that, then you gotta get a zoning variance. You know, that's another way that we can help control some of that.
no problem.
I mean, but as far as the other part, as far as having a separate classification for barndominium, I said, you know, the steel buildings, when you build a steel building, then that falls underneath commercial use. You know, as far as if you're gonna put up a total steel structure, not that they're not coming, where they're using steel studs, you know, for outside, for structural and everything else, but that's more in a commercial setting. You know?
I don't know why you wouldn't use it in a residential if it comes to, if you're gonna build a building like this.
There's
no-
still kind of a pain in the butt, and when you do that, then it adds a whole nother slew of things. typical wiring of a house where you can, drill through and run it through a stud and everything's gotta be enclosed with conduit. It's gotta have special push